In fact, Sandra, why don't you kick us off? Because you're going to give us some of the intro, right, of what to watch out for when we.
Yeah, I can do that. So welcome everybody to the Davis Electric Vehicle Association General Meeting. My name's Sandra. I'm one of the board members. And then you've heard from Richard. He's also a board member and he will be running us through the meeting today. Just a quick note. The meeting is being recorded, so if you do not want to be recorded, I'd suggest turning off your camera and putting yourself on mute. You've heard we put this recording up on our on the Cool Davis YouTube after the meeting has completed, so that other people that couldn't attend the meeting can still watch the presentations and hear all the latest electric vehicle news. So just a couple of reminders, like I said, be on mute unless you're asking a question or making a statement, so we don't get the background chatter that might be happening in your home. If you do have a question that you want to ask during a presentation, if you can type it into the chat, that will help us organize them for the presenters, so we can ask them in an orderly fashion. There are just a couple descriptions of the tool there. There's the mute, the stop video, all at the bottom of your screen. So that's where you have your controls. But of course, we love to see you on video. We love to connect with you and see your reaction. So we welcome you to stay on video. And of course, again, this meeting is being recorded, but thank you all so much for joining. And I'm going to pass it off to Richard.
Great. Thank you, Sandra. One thing to add about what you said is, if anybody wants to serve on the board with us, feel free to send us a note at deva@cooldavis.org. And I tell you what we do, we meet about once a month just to, basically we got a lot of suggestions for ideas of topics to bring up from members. In fact, another thing is, if you guys have a good idea out there, like, the first two on here are hydrogen fueled EVs and e-bikes were the suggestions we got at the beginning of the year. If you have other good ideas, things you want to hear about, shoot us a note there. But I encourage you too, if you want to be part of the board. The board is basically, we get together, at least it's the last 2 years, on Zoom, and just kind of go through what new ideas there are and what we might do at the next meeting. So,
Richard, I assume you don't have to own an EV or be a resident in Davis to be on the board, or am I correct?
Yeah, I think that's true. You don't have to have an EV if you want to. If you, in fact, want to represent the EV curious, you can do that too and join us. We're glad to have you. Actually, it's always better to get new ideas and get a better cross section of people out there watching. I'm glad to get that. So I'll launch right into tonight's agenda and then we'll get started. In fact, we had a nice little talk before we got started here. And that was almost our hot topics, I think. But we've got a couple of great presentations today. Raoul Renaud is going to talk to us about his experiences driving a hydrogen fueled EV, which is great because, we've all talked amongst ourselves about some of the issues, and I've read some. And so now we're going to get the bottom line. And then Microtransit and electric bikes. We're going to have a great presentation on that because I'll get to that later on too. I think that's an exciting topic. And then the infrastructure bill has got signed, and Senator's going to give us a really short update on that. And then finally, we'll get into the Chevrolet Bolt EV recall. What's going on? What are the next steps? So at the end too, people want to hang on and ask us questions about EVs, and that's a free form. Anybody can join in if they want to. So. Hot topics. Does anybody want to bring up just any EV news they've heard they want to share? Guy, anything on your end?
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Hey, this Saturday is the Santa Parade down in over in Sacramento, and they've asked us to bring a number of electric cars and participate in that parade. So we've got several already, including the Mustang Mach-E and Tesla Model X with the Falcon Wing doors and such. So would definitely love to have a couple others to participate in it. It starts at 10 o'clock. I'll put my name in the chat and email, but please, we need some more volunteers to really help educate the community, continue to educate the community. There are about 20,000 people that'll be along the parade route. So this will be a
Wow.
pretty visible activity, and we'll be there with, you know, horses and marching bands and all the other things you'd expect to see in a large parade, and that would be going around the Capitol building and such in Sacramento. So please consider just joining us. If you don't have an electric car, fine, you can join us by sitting in and with someone else. We'll be there. That's first. So please join us. So we need some more. And there may be some things more, Richard, as I think of them, but thank you for that opportunity.
Sure. Anybody else got any couple things you want to, any EV news lately? Okay, you always add it to the end. So why don't we just go to our first item and
Oh, actually, I can do one more, I guess, Richard, if I've got another minute. So
Sure.
it looks like in the next, within the next 3 days, or maybe a multi-day activity, that the California Building Standards Commission will be reviewing their final proposal for infrastructure, electric charging infrastructure for any new apartment or single-family home or non-residential parking. So, and it looks like that'll, at an absolute minimum, it looks like it'll jump it up to 40% of any new multifamily residency, that like apartment complex that starts in new construction. Minimum of 40% of their spaces need to have EV and charging infrastructure. So if you, and this will take place for the effective January 1st of 2023. So it's not like right away, but it takes time for people to get, to be notified about it and change their plans and such, but it's only new constructions. So if you have any questions about that, please reach out to me as well.
Great.
And I'll come back to you, Richard. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Guy. Guy's the font of all EV knowledge in the Sacramento area here, so in touch with what goes on. Okay, first item, Raoul Renaud is going to tell us a little bit about his experiences driving a hydrogen-fueled EV, and I think I'm really excited to hear about this. I think we've heard a little bit, in the past. I've heard a couple of people about, they knew somebody else that knew somebody else that had an EV. But Raoul, why don't you jump right into it?
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I'm new to this Zoom stuff, so I'm going to try pressing my share screen button, and I believe that's what I want. Share.
You can pick your window.
Okay, so hopefully you're looking at a picture of a little Prius in a car wash.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Good.
All right, great. My name is Raoul Renault. I have been driving electrified vehicles since 2010, and been very curious about them, very interested in them, and I've had the good fortune and opportunity to have lived with quite a few. As I put this presentation together, I realized, my goodness, I've really been through a lot of electrified cars. And actually, this Prius is the first one. My wife and I leased it in 2010 right here in Davis. This is it going through a car wash in Philadelphia in just a few months ago, where it now lives with my daughter, who's in medical school, and she uses it to go to her various rounds and so on at hospitals in the Philadelphia area. Car's running perfectly. It's never given us any trouble. But I remember from the moment we got it, what I really loved to do with that car was to see how long I could go along Cavell at 40 miles an hour just on the electric motor. And so from that, of course, when the Nissan Leaf arrived on our shores, and I don't know if you can see the picture of the Leafs yet. I think there is a delay. I had to go test drive one, and I didn't even get off the dealer's lot with it before I realized I've got to have one of these. They, back in those days, they had terrific lease deals trying to roll these cars out. So we leased that red one. And then liked it so much that 6 months later we leased the blue one. So we kind of had his and hers lease for a 3-year lease, and loved driving those cars. The drawback, of course, was the sort of 80-mile, 90-mile range. But I was adventurous. I always enjoyed seeing if I could make it to the Bay Area in them, and you could come pretty close usually. So when those leases were up, and the batteries, by the way, had lost a fair amount of their range, we turned the cars in, and next we started what was out then was a good deal was the Chevy Spark EV. So this is the 2015 Spark EV on its way home from the dealer in San Leandro, getting its first quick charge there in Vacaville. And then a few months later, got this red 2016 Spark EV. That's me driving it off the dealer lot. And this is it, in fact, at one of your showcases, probably in 2016, I would imagine. Again, the Spark EV was a really fun little car, but not luxurious by any means, but fun to drive and decent range, and we enjoyed those thoroughly. So around that same time, 2016, I had daughters back east in college, and the one who was in upstate New York convinced us that she really had to have a car. So we turned over the Prius to her, and this is it, in fact, being on its way across country in 2016, or maybe it's 2017. Might have even been 2018. I'm not positive, but in any event, probably somewhere in Arizona or Utah. And the car's been there ever since, first with the one daughter in upstate New York, and now with the other one in Philadelphia. So with that car gone from our fleet, and I should say that the Prius was kind of our standby car for when we needed to go somewhere farther away than the Leaf or the Spark EV would take us. We no longer had that, so we needed to replace it. And what made sense was a Volt. So we got a 2018 Volt. And so there we had kind of a combination of a low range EV plus a Prius. And it was perfect for my wife to drive to work. She got around on electricity almost all the time, but it was also great for longer trips and so on. So the Volt was a terrific car for us. Again, it was leased. It went back, and my wife decided she liked kayaking. And so we shopped around, and we wound up getting her this Chrysler Pacifica hybrid, which we found can actually fit 2 kayaks inside. And so again, she drives that to work, 40-mile or so range. It gets her back and forth to work every day without using any gas, and thoroughly enjoy that car. I always recommend the Pacifica hybrid to people. It's an excellent car. This is the day we picked it up from the dealer down in Monterey, and they tied balloons to it and made it fun for us. You can also see it was COVID time because we're wearing our masks. Once the Volt was returned, and we now had the van, I then drove the Honda Clarity fuel cell electric vehicle for 4 years. But I just wanted to let you know that has gone back too. It was a lease that was up in July, and I ordered a Tesla Model Y, and this is my Model Y. In fact, the day it arrived at my home, Tesla delivered it to my home. I was very impressed with their service, but they actually brought it to my home in a covered trailer, and thoroughly enjoying the Model Y. But all of that just to show you that I love EVs and been driving them for a few years. What I'm here to talk about is this one. This is the 2017 Honda Clarity fuel cell electric vehicle. Again, this is the day I brought it home from the dealer in Roseville. There are 12 Honda dealers in the state that were authorized to handle these cars, and the one in Roseville was the closest. So as I say, I got that in July of 2017. little trivia, its serial number was 410. It was the 410th one off the line. And those early ones were pretty much hand built at the Honda Skunk Works in Takanazawa, Japan. It's a beautifully put together car. And before I got that car, for roughly 2007 to 2017, I was working at the California Energy Commission, which, among other things, has programs to roll out and fund zero emission vehicles. And they had programs, or they had deals where manufacturers would sometimes bring cars to us to try out, the employees to try out. And so one day Toyota brought a bunch of the new Mirai, and that's what these are, for staff to ride and drive. And I thought, that's not bad. It's a nice car. It's only 4 passengers, but it's electric, 300-mile range, and it seemed kind of neat. Then Honda brought the Clarity to our office, and I test drove that, and that really sold me on it. And that was partly because it had 366 miles of range. It had 5 seats instead of 4, and a number of other perks. And this is my instrument cluster shortly after refueling it one day. So you can see the predicted range was 372 miles. And that was pretty accurate. That was, it tended to, it always did over 300. Sometimes you get quite a bit more than that. But the deal was too good to pass up. In addition to the long range, you got a card like that Visa card you're looking at. It's good for $15,000 worth of hydrogen. So you just go to the hydrogen fueling station, stick that card in it, and out would come the hydrogen into your car. That was more than enough to get you through the 3 or 4 years of your lease. You'd also get a $5,000 check from the CVRP program. This is my particular $5,000 check. So that was a terrific bonus. You got a 21-day Avis rental certificate, so that if you wanted to use a car to go beyond the range of the hydrogen fueling network, you could do that. And the deal was essentially $3,000 down, $400 a month, and you had a $20,000 mile annual mileage allowance, which is quite a lot for those of you who lease. So it was a tremendous deal. And I began, I had just retired, so I began using my car as much as I could to tour the state. This is it being refueled at the refueling station in Hollywood, California. You can see the Hollywood sign there in the background. Most of the fueling stations are located in gas stations, like this one. This is a True Zero station. Here I am on a trip down the coast highway. This was considered rather daring because there are no fueling stations along the coast highway. You have to refuel and fuel up in San Jose, and then you don't have any more opportunity until Santa Barbara. But the Clarity really had no problem making that trip, and I did it several times. This is a typical fueling station. This is the one at La Cañada, Flint Ridge in Southern California, which is kind of in the Pasadena area. Again, another True Zero. And if I'm not mistaken, this is on the grounds of an Arco station. I even ventured into Mexico with my car. The lease actually forbade removing the vehicle from the United States of America. But one day I said I'm going to do it. So I refueled in San Diego, crossed the border at Tijuana, drove down to Ensenada, and then turned left, and you come into a wine region called the Valle de Guadalupe, which is very beautiful and well worth visiting if you haven't. And just took a day trip and drove through, and it was really a lot of fun. It was a little nerve-wracking because there is no hydrogen in Mexico, but my backup plan was if something went wrong or whatever, I would have the car flatbedded back to the border and then call Honda roadside assistance. But everything went fine. I made it back to San Diego, no problem. Quite a few trips up to the snow country. I don't remember what winter this is, but maybe 2019. And this is refueling at the Tahoe Truckee True Zero station. In the background, you can see a kind of, what appears to be a wooden fence, or I don't know, it's metal, but it's brown fence. And inside that fence is all the equipment where the hydrogen storage is located, as well as the compression equipment and so on. And I'll get into more detail about all of those inner workings. This is, again, at that same winter trip. I just wanted to show one of the nice features of this car, and one I wish Tesla would include, is a heads-up display. And if you look closely, you can see my speedometer is reading 56, and you can see projected in the windshield is a little 56. And that also, if I was using the navigation, it would be showing the turns to make up there. It's a very nice little feature, and particularly on the Model Y, where you really don't have anything in front of you, I think a heads-up display would just be a great addition. So I enjoyed driving that car. I drove it for, well, the 3-year lease, and at the end of the lease, I was offered the opportunity to have it for a 4th year, just keep making the payments. And that's an awfully good deal, so I did. And after 4 years and about 42,000 miles, I turned the car in at the end of July. This was my home fueling station. It's in West Sacramento on River Road. You've probably seen the big Shell station there. It's Ramus Oil Company. And when I started going there, it was Linde, and then Iwatani took it over. And this is the new hydrogen pump that they installed, or the dispenser is really what they should be called. As you can see, it kind of looks like a big gas dispenser or gas pump. It has the readouts for the amount of money, how many kilograms rather than gallons, and the price per kilogram, which you can see is a lot, $16.67. Fortunately, you have that $15,000 card, so you're not worried about the price. A kilogram of fuel would take the typical fuel cell car about 60 to 70 miles. You would basically just stick your card in the pump and punch a couple of buttons, and it would be ready. If you open the fueling door on a fuel cell car, this is what you see. You see that fitting. And then your nozzle is going to be one of 2 types. It's either this one, this is the older type, and you just stick that hole in the end of the nozzle over that fitting, and you squeeze the handle, and it clicks on into a very kind of firm and reassuring mechanical connection. And then you press start on the pump, and you hear hissing, and for the next 5 or 10 minutes, hydrogen flows into your car at 10,000 psi until it's full, or hopefully until it's full. Because one of the difficulties with hydrogen fueling is the amount of compression that's required. And the equipment, even the most modern equipment, seems to have difficulty keeping up with multiple fills. So if you pulled up right after another car had finished, you might find that the equipment either wasn't ready to refuel because it needed to repressurize, or if it did start refueling, it might not give you a full fill because it didn't have adequate pressure. This is the newer kind of fueling nozzle. I think eventually or gradually they're switching over to these. It's a little bit simpler, a little more rugged. You just basically stick that onto that fitting on the car, and it locks itself. Let's see. So here's my car being refueled at West Sacramento. It was right after they had opened this new dispenser, and so they had an attendant there to help out with people. But most of the time, it wasn't hard to refuel the car. It was no more difficult than refueling a gasoline car. Here's kind of the layout. of the fuel cell powertrain in the Honda. The fuel cell powertrain was all under the hood, and that was a new development for Honda. Toyota had to place some of the components inside the cab, like between the back seats, but Honda managed to squeeze the whole thing in under the hood. So you have in there the fuel cell stack, the drive motor, and I'm not sure what else, but there's a lot of components. It's very full under the hood. There's a battery. It's not a very big battery, but it's kind of a buffer. So the fuel cell can create power and put it into the battery, and then it's there when you need it instantaneously. And then you have the hydrogen tanks. And obviously there's that big one in the back is huge, and it took up a good half of the trunk. So that was a drawback with the fuel cell vehicles, was the trunk space was very limited, and the rear seat did not fold down. I like to carry my bicycle with my car when I want to take a ride, and I ended up having to use a trunk mounted rack with this car, but I get used to that. It's no big deal. This is a view of the engine compartment. Just shows you it's very full under there, but there really wasn't any user serviceable stuff. So you could look at it and basically hope nothing ever went wrong, because you wouldn't have any idea what to do. About once a year, the dreaded service due soon notice would come up. 8,000 to 10,000 miles was usually about what it took. And this was somewhat of a rude surprise, because you'd go in for that service and it would turn out to be anywhere from $300 to $500, replacing a couple of filters that are involved in the fuel cell stack system. I'm not sure what else, but there was that amount of maintenance, which I wasn't used to having to pay for annual maintenance, especially on a leased car, but that did come up. And with the early fuel cell vehicles, and mine was one of them, a defect turned up in the system that was basically slowly destroying the fuel cell stack. So they issued a recall, and my car was one of the ones that had to be recalled. It's a $40,000 part. And so, but Honda was repairing the cars as long as they still had plenty of time left on the lease, and mine did. They had my car for 6 weeks. They kindly, gave me a replacement rental, and actually, it was kind of fun because it was a sporty little Buick convertible, so I did enjoy that. But it was gasoline. I hate driving gas cars. Eventually, they found a leased return Clarity that had a good fuel cell stack, cannibalized that out of that car, put it in my car, and I got my car back.
Raul, I just want to give a quick time check for if you're about to close, that'd be great.
I think I'm pretty close, yes.
Great.
Okay, so I just wanted to show you about in the last year or so of my driving a fuel cell vehicle, I'm not sure why, but there began to be constraints on hydrogen supply, as well as equipment issues with some of the stations. And so you began to see these lines, and this is the Citrus Heights station. It's not a very good shot, but there's about half a dozen cars there. So if you're in the back of that line, you're looking at an hour wait. That was pretty discouraging. Fortunately, again, I'm retired. It wasn't a huge deal for me. I could plan around this, but people who need to use these cars every day to get back and forth to work and whatnot, that was a real burden. There's another line. This is in Southern California. I don't know if the program was a victim of its own success or what exactly was going on, but having to hunt for hydrogen and line up to get it seemed to be becoming the norm. Again, more specifically in Southern California, but it could happen anywhere. Questions were asked the last time there was a little presentation about hydrogen, about the storage and so on. So I'll just show you quickly. This is a liquid hydrogen storage tank. This is what they use in West Sacramento and some of the other stations. Liquid hydrogen, as you can imagine, is extremely cold. I don't know the number of degrees that is, but it's very, very, very cold to be in a liquid. But storing it this way takes up the least space and gives you the biggest quantity. So the liquid stations tended never to run out. The other stations use just tubes like this, and this is a tube trailer. Most stations would get their resupply from a tube trailer, and they would simply unload all those tubes and put them in a storage building where they were hooked up to the system. Just a final note, since we're going to be talking about bicycles, my trip to France this summer, I went to visit a area of France where they're trying to introduce hydrogen as a kind of a way of life. And there's a company called Atawe that has these hydrogen bicycles, and they intended them to be used for public bicycle service because they don't need to be recharged very often. They can go for, you know, a couple of weeks between being refueled. So they wouldn't let me try one out or anything, but I got a picture of one. And that same part of France, this is their hydrogen pump. The day I was there, it was being worked on, and it reminded me of what I saw many times in driving my car, where I pull up to a station that was out of commission, and I looked around the corner and the gate was open, and there were guys down on their knees surrounded by wires and tubes and pumps and wrenches, and, you know, trying to get the thing to work. But the fueling system struck me as really complicated and temperamental, and it seemed to take almost full-time attention to keep those things up and running. As of today, there are 48 hydrogen stations. I know there are many more in the works, but my goodness, they are slow in coming. And I think that the hydrogen supply itself is presently a problem. I understand, again, there's in the works more capacity coming, but it hasn't arrived yet. I really think for the future, I'm seeing much more possibility and potential in heavy duty, aviation, rail, marine, trucking. And I think if that gets going, that may trickle down to the automotive level for light duty. But as it is right now, it's you have to view yourself as a pioneer, be willing to put up with quite a lot of inconvenience and limitations. That said, I'm pleased to have done it, and I think I'm done.
Thanks, Raul.
Thank
You know,
Yeah, I just got to show you these quick. These are
we do need
Volkswagen.
to, we have two other presentations.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, Volkswagen ID3. That's all.
oh, we got
Wonderful.
ID3 is good. So a
E-bike.
couple of things I saw in the chats too. It doesn't look like hydrogen right now is real cost efficient. It seems like it's pretty expensive.
It is.
So you're gonna have to make a big change in that. And the other thing I've heard too is, where do you get the hydrogen from? So you're not basically burning fossil fuel again if it's methane derived,
Right.
and energy put into it. But it sounds like there's still, they've been working on hydrogen a while. It sounds like they're gonna have to do a lot more work to really make it.
Yeah, the global hydrogen is all centered around using solar and wind to create the hydrogen through electrolysis. It's not going to work any other way. But so that's really where they're headed. But currently, natural gas is the primary fuel source, and that's not going to be sustainable.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks, Raul.
Thank you.
We did have one other question in the chat. Is the station generally manned or unmanned, and are you allowed to refuel yourself, or does an attendant take care of it?
No, the stations are generally not, I mean, they're usually gas stations, so there may be a cashier or something, but nobody is there typically running this hydrogen dispenser. You do that yourself. That picture I showed you, that was unusual, and it was just because Iwatani was proud of their new dispenser, and so they wanted someone there to show people how to use it. Was there another part of that question?
How long does it take to fuel?
If everything's working right, it takes about 5 minutes to put about 4 to 5 kilograms into the car. Realistically, it's maybe going to be more like 10 to 15 because the equipment can start and stop to catch up. But it's
Great.
ideally 5 minutes.
Great. So I'm going to say we're going to have to hold all the rest of the questions until the end,
Okay.
just so we can make sure we can get the other presentations in. So Jim, I'm sorry, but we're going to have you ask your question after the other two presentations when we all come back together again, if that's all right. Richard,
Sorry if I went over.
That's okay.
Good. It's
Okay,
interesting. Yeah,
great.
we can always add the questions at the end too. Bring them up. It's good. Okay. So Sandra, if you get the screen where we're going to talk about electric bikes. And so I said this before we actually got our meeting started too. If you'd asked me about 4 months ago about electric bikes, I'd say, hey, nice little niche idea, not much going on. And then, you know, I walked to my market right after that and pulled up, whoa, electric bike magazine. And found out I've been in the dark here for about 6 years, and electric bikes are jumping off the map. So we're lucky tonight to have Peter Jacobsen and Ken Bradford talk to us about electric bikes. And Peter's a civil engineer with working on transportation issues, and he's a board member of Bike Davis. So he's going to give us a lot of lowdown on electric bikes, how they fit in with our systems too, with our microtransit system. And then Ken, who's owner of Ken's Bike Ski and Ford, is going to fill us in on, you know, what types of models, what kind of e-bikes are available soon now, and you know, actually I don't think we have to say now in the future, because it seems like a lot of bikes out there. So with that, Peter, why don't you kick it off and get started?
Hey, thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
I'm pleased to come before DEVA. I think this audience is probably one of the more receptive audiences to the whole idea of micromobility. And I'm just sort of wondering if people could respond via chat and let us know if you've ridden an e-bike or an e-scooter, or even if you own one. I'd be kind of curious, just a little pulse of the group here. So can you make my slides on?
You're on right now.
I'm on, but my
Can you see them?
slides,
Oh, you're right.
I don't
That's
see
not
them.
your first slide. So Sandra.
Oh, it's
Anyway, what I want to do is introduce the idea of what is micromobility. And basically, creative people can come up with lots of ways of combining a small motor, a small battery, and wheels. And that's micromobility. You know, an e-bike motor is typically like a 1/4 horsepower. An e-bike battery is maybe like a 1/2 kilowatt hour. So this, you know, these are much smaller than, you know, the EVs that we all think about. You know, the micromobility addresses many of the problems that we as society have with vehicles. You know, they're obviously more healthful for people because you actually get some exercise. There's less harm, less space taken up with these things, less danger. The slide we're not seeing here is a slide I have of the Saturday Night Live, basically showing Saturday Night Live covered e-bikes, which is kind of big time. The point they made.
Sandra, do you have the slides? Can you put her slides up?
sorry, I thought I was sharing. I thought you
No,
could see this.
no, you're not sharing.
Okay, 1 second.
Well, I'll just keep on yakking. So the show must go on. The point they made in the Saturday Night Live is that it's the fastest growing EV out there. There we go.
There you go.
Thank you.
Just popped off. Pop it on.
Yeah. You know, in the United States, we buy more e-bikes than we buy electric vehicles, and the sales of e-bikes are growing faster than EVs. E-bike sales are the greatest in China, not yet, and China, Japan, and the prosperous countries of Europe. In Germany, where we think of they love their Mercedes and their BMWs, they buy one e-bike for every 2 cars they buy. In the Netherlands, where they love their bicycles, they buy more electric bikes than regular bikes. This slide here, you know, 70% of the people worldwide will consider micromobility. This survey found that 60% of the people in the US would consider micromobility. I think that's pretty damn impressive. For, you know, as Richard pointed out, didn't even know about e-bikes until we found this magazine. So it's an up and coming thing. Let's go to the next one. what's important here is keep in mind that we as a society need to get to carbon neutral by 2050 to keep their climate, habitable. So next slide. There's also evidence showing that the climate is changing much faster than predicted. So that's kind of, making more imperative. Next slide. Can we do it? The hard part is transportation is really slow to zero out, with the projections people make. In this slide in the far right, you can see the passenger vehicles are the last thing to zero out. So the next slide. We need to keep in mind, really our goal is not so much getting everyone into an EV as much as getting all these legacy vehicles out of circulation. With micromobility, we're getting an order of magnitude less carbon than a legacy car. An EV is great, moves us maybe a third of the way, but we really need to go further than that. Next slide. The thinking is that micromobility can happen quicker than we can retire legacy vehicles alone. The evidence shows that when people get e-bikes, they make a mode shift from cars. Interesting little factoid is there's a greater increase in e-bike use among women than with men. Also, there's no difference with age. Those are two things that sort of surprised me. There's a concern that we shift people from regular bikes to e-bikes, but that's actually a net positive. E-bikes are ridden faster, they're ridden more often, and they're ridden further distances. So that's a net positive for physical activity. Next. The current bill floating around in Congress right now does have some credits for e-bikes. It's a little unfortunate. The e-bike credit is small compared to either an EV or an electric motorcycle, and the eligibility criteria is far stricter, which is a kind of surprise considering that as we talk, that an e-bike has a whole lot less environmental footprint than a e-motorcycle or e-car. Next. There are some other approaches that are showing success. Durham, North Carolina is a place you might not expect an effort, but basically they gave e-bikes to downtown small business employees. That was the idea, is getting some of the traffic out of downtown, getting some of the parked cars out of downtown. Oakland has started an e-bike library where you can check out an e-bike and try one for a week. That's based on a program in Canberra, Australia, which is the capital of Australia. The e-bike library there, they have 9 different varieties of e-bikes you can borrow, from a traditional bike to a sporty bike to a cargo bike to a kid-friendly to hauling kid sort of bike. Anyway, they found they have a long waiting list to borrow one. With that, I'm turn over to Ken, and Ken can talk more specifics here.
Okay, John?
Okay. So, yeah, Chris asked me to talk a little more about specifics of e-bikes mechanics. So can you see my PowerPoint there? Yeah. Okay, good. Slide the controls. So there we go. Okay, so that's me. And if you get a recording of this or you want my PowerPoint, there's how to contact me. I'm the principal owner of Ken's Bike Ski Board. Start into types of e-bikes. This is according to California Vehicle Code, and this code has been copied by many states, but it is not the same in every state. And it's very different in Europe, and the whole market is very different in China and in Europe and the US, the 3 main markets. They're totally different what types of bikes are ridden and so on. But anyway, in California, type 1 will assist you up to 20 miles per hour. That has no throttle. It's pedal assist only. It doesn't go anywhere unless you pedal. Type 2 can assist you up to 20 miles per hour with the throttle. So meaning either the pedal assist or the throttle cuts out at 20 miles per hour. Type 3 assists you up to 28 miles per hour, but cannot have a throttle. And incidentally, in Europe, it's 15, well, in parts of Europe, like in the UK, it's 15 miles per hour maximum. So there are all kinds of hacks, mechanical and electronic, to ungovern your e-bike and let it go faster. Obviously, they're totally illegal. The only things that are legal in the US would be something that makes a type 1 e-bike into a type 3. In other words, you just raise the speed limit to 28, but most of them do a lot more than that. Anything above 28 miles per hour or above 750 watts, it's an electric motorcycle, completely different laws apply. And just for reference, the jump bikes that some of you have ridden, well, they weigh about twice as much as most of the other e-bikes that you can buy. And they were governed to 15 miles per hour, just the ones at Davis. If you're renting one in San Francisco, it was 20. If it was in Davis, it was 15, because the campus speed limit is 15. So here's a slide that gives you a rough rundown. Again, I won't go through everything, but you can look at it if you look at it later. Regular bicycle, type 1, type 2, type 3, and moped. The speed limits, all that I just covered. The main thing over there on the right, bikeway access, almost everything is legal everywhere. The one exception, one no, is a type 3 e-bike is technically illegal on a class 1 bike path. Class 1 means separated bike path, like the green belts in Davis are class 1 bike paths. So I have a type 3 e-bike. Technically, it's not legal. I will tell you, I'm a scofflaw. I do it all the time. Law enforcement has no idea whether you're on type 1, 2, or 3. They're usually not even aware you're on an e-bike versus a regular bike. They don't care. I know I shouldn't say that. Hope I don't get in trouble with some law enforcement person on the call, but the main thing is it's rider behavior. It's not vehicle capacity. Think of it this way. I mean, you own a car, maybe it goes 110 miles an hour, 160 miles an hour maximum speed on your car. You know, when I was growing up, cars went, you know, had V8 engines and went, I don't know how fast. But, you know, is it illegal to have a car that goes 120 miles per hour on the freeway with the speed limit 65? No, it's not. Is it illegal to drive that down my street in Davis where the speed limit's 25? No, it's not. What's illegal is the behavior of driving it faster than the speed limit. On those multi-use bike paths, green belts, and so on in Davis, they are, the speed limit is 15, just like it is on campus. So don't go over 15 and you won't be busted, is what I tell my customers. I'm not encouraging dangerous behavior. Most of the time you should be well below 15 if there are other users on the path. So anyway, I wouldn't worry about that, but that is on the chart for a reason, because that is technically what the law says. So styles of e-bikes, they're performance road bikes that are often used for recreational riding, or also for intercity commutes. It's quite practical to commute from here to, we have customers who ride to Sacramento daily, or even as far as Roseville, and actually don't even necessarily have the performance type bike. We'll get into some details on the bikes later, but we're dealing with transportation bikes. There are also all kinds of recreational, like hunting e-bikes. We're not going to get into that today because we're talking about micro-mobility and transportation, but the performance road bikes have a place for that, for intercity commutes. You have the performance hybrid, kind of the lightweight hybrid bike for fitness riding. A lot of people use them to keep in shape, and also for faster intracity commutes, shorter distances. Comfort bikes for casual riding and more relaxed commuting. That's the most approachable type. If somebody hasn't been on a bike in 30 years, or they have never been on an e-bike before and they wonder what it's all about, that's what we have in our demo fleet. That's what we send people out on. It's just easy, approachable for anybody. There are cargo bikes, which is actually a misnomer in the US. Well, I'll just say in Davis, 95% of them are used as family bikes. They're used for hauling kids to school and groceries. They can also be used by businesses for hauling cargo, like in London, England, very popular solution for last mile delivery of everything from butcher shops to bakeries to mail to whatever. But really, when you think about it, you have a heavy load of business stuff or of children. Those are the riders who need the assist the most, especially on hills. So worldwide, where it's not flat like Davis and the distances are greater, electric cargo bikes far outsell non-electric cargo bikes. That's the rider who needs it. And then there are three-wheelers for those who can't balance a two-wheeled bike or don't want to. A lot of electric trikes. And then, of course, there are mountain bikes and other things, like I said, hunting bikes for recreational use. The types of pedal assist. So we said well, there's throttle only, where, you know, the bike's got pedals, you can pedal it, and then you can push the throttle and it gives you some boost. But it's two completely independent things. They're additive, obviously. You pedal so many watts and then you push the throttle for so many watts, they add together and you go faster. But there's no interaction between the two. There's a pedaling sensor. We'll get to all that in a minute, but a cadence sensor or a torque sensor. And all of those can come with or without a throttle attached to it. So bear with me here. Throttle only has advantages and disadvantages. Simple and cheap to build. Disadvantage, it's not as much fun as the other types, and we'll get into that. People that like to bag on those, you know, the purists say it encourages lazy operation without pedaling. And I see people, they're on a bike, but they're not pedaling. They're just, you see that a lot in Davis now. You know, to me, it makes it like an electric scooter or a skateboard. It's still micro mobility. It's still a lot better than getting in a car or even on a bus. You're still getting where you're going. I don't have a problem. Like I said, I'm not a purist. And also it makes it possible for those who couldn't otherwise, you know, do it to still enjoy bike riding. I have one good customer who had to have a bike with a throttle because his hip locks up sometimes. Sometimes he can pedal and sometimes he can't. A lot of times he can't, but he's been a bike rider all his life and he wants to continue riding his bike to the co-op to get groceries. So most of the time he can't pedal, but he can use his throttle and it works. So I don't have a problem. It allows more people to participate in micromobility. And like I said, it's a far lower footprint than a car. So pedaling sensor is a little different. It has a switch that turns on the motor when the rider pedals. So you start pedaling and boom, there's all your, and I was going to make graphs, don't have time, but you know, there's all your power as soon as you hit the pedals. So it's this kind of uncomfortable feeling. You lurch forward. You can tell I'm not a big fan, but anyway, all the power happens at once when you start pedaling. So the plus is, again, they're simple and cheap to build. It's an easy switch, and it makes e-bikes accessible to lower budgets. The disadvantage is it's a little disconcerting, if not dangerous, when all that power happens at once. You know, people take their first test ride and they're like, ah, because it all happens at once. And there's also there's nothing more. I mean, it all comes on when you start pedaling, but you get up to where you really need more boost, it's not there because it's on or off. But you can choose multiple assist levels. To be fair, usually you have 3 or 5 different levels. So you can get like 25% of your boost to happen when you start pedaling, but you still have nothing more after that. So cadence sensor measures the rider's cadence, which same as RPM on a car, and adjusts the motor output proportionally. So much more sophisticated. The faster you pedal, the more power you get, which sounds good. Advantages, you get rid of that big surge of power when you're starting out. And it encourages higher cadences, which is usually a good thing. Most bike riders pedal too slowly, and it's bad for a number of reasons biomechanically. Disadvantages are, think about it, when do you need the most power when you're riding a bike? You need it when you're climbing a hill. And what is your cadence like when you're climbing a hill? It's low. Your torque is high, you know, you're trying to get up that hill. So you have a low cadence, so you're gonna have low assist. But you got a lot of torque. So what do you need? You need a torque sensor, which measures the rider's torque, power output, you know, and adjusts the motor output proportionally. And, you know, torque sensors have been around a long time. They're just expensive to build. And they've gotten better, but, you know, I was selling a torque sensor bike in 1997. You know, so the theory is the harder you pedal, not the faster you pedal, but the harder the pedal, the more assist you get. So advantages, obviously, you get the most power when you need it the most. And also it multiplies the rider's output. So that natural feeling is a lot more fun. We were talking about this before, you know, it's likened to, you know, I feel like Superman or something. You just feel like your legs are so strong today, but it's all proportional to how much you put in. You pedal a little less, it gives you a little less. You pedal more, it gives you more. One of the companies that we sell their bikes, they're called turbos, and they have this saying about, you know, you send somebody on a test ride on one of these bikes, and they come back with the turbo smile. I mean, that's a thing they make, and it's true. You know, people ride it and they go, "Wow, I feel great. I feel like, you know, Superman." So it's kind of it's a fun feeling that makes you want to ride more. Drawbacks: it's the most difficult to engineer, so it's the most expensive, and some torque sensors are better than others. I put that in quotes because there's some companies that claim they have a torque sensor, but when I ride the bike, it's like, no, this is just basically a pedaling sensor, or it's pretty crude. It maybe kind of steps up a bit, but you know, when you've ridden a good torque sensing bike, it just feels totally different. You know, but imagine a car that had a gas pedal, that you hit the gas pedal and you get all the horsepower you're going to get instantly. That's your pedaling sensor bike. So, you know, you want the output proportional to your input, and that's why a torque sensor is the best, but it's also complex and expensive. There's also a distinction between hub drive and mid drive. Hub drive is usually in the rear hub, sometimes in the front. Advantages: it's usually less expensive. It's easier to install an existing bike. 10 years ago, we did a lot of conversions of older bikes to e-bikes. And a lot of times we had to, like if we wanted to do a tadpole trike or we wanted to do a cargo bike or something, that was the only option because there were only so many e-bikes on the market 10 years or 20 years ago. Now that doesn't happen anymore, and we're kind of over those because you can buy an integrated system, a bike that is designed for it. Bolting one onto an existing bike has some issues. You know, some components on the bike aren't designed to handle that torque, etc. So, but a hub drive can be sometimes installed on an existing bike. And a hub drive, for reasons I won't go into, creates less wear on your drivetrain than a conventional bike. Disadvantage: inferior weight balance. Usually the battery and the motor, everything is at the back of the bike. It makes the bike handle kind of funny. And hub drives generally have less torque for hill climbing. They're good for speed, but not for torque. Mid drives have the motor built into the frame right around the bottom bracket and actually add the torque at the crank, not at the rear hub. Oh yes, and the one other advantage, disadvantage, changing a tire on a hub drive is absolutely horrible. You do not want to do it. Some are worse than others, but believe me, you just, all the wiring and sometimes torque arms that have to be taken apart, put back together, and it's horrible. It's something you never want to do. Mid-drive gives you better torque, so it's better for hill climbing. It's better for heavy loads and cargo bikes. It's a far better idea to have a mid-drive bike. You get a much better weight balance. The motor and usually the battery are located low in the center of the bike, which makes the bike handle much better, safer. All your wiring is usually integrated. It's a short distance from the battery to the motor. Nothing is going to the wheels or the hub or anything, so it's much easier to wire. Keep all the wiring inside the frame, much cleaner, less chance to break in a wire. Changing a tire is just as easy as any other bike because the wheels attach quite independently of the motor system, which is in the crankset. Disadvantage, they're really hard to add on. There's some bolt-on mid-drive kits, but they don't work very well. So it kind of has to be designed in. You have to buy a bike that's designed for it. And they do create more wear on the drivetrain of the bike. So the best e-bikes have the heart of a good bicycle, which is a good frame design and construction. There's a lot of junko e-bikes out there. A lot of e-bike companies that are springing up that don't know anything about bikes, about designing bikes, about how bikes should handle, what the geometry should be like, how they should work. There's a lot of cheap garbage out there, sorry. And we've tried selling some lower priced e-bikes, around $1,000, about 10 years ago, we were trying some, but we just had too many problems with them. It wasn't giving our customers anywhere close to the same experience that you got in the higher price ranges. So we stopped doing that. I realize that for some people, that's the only option. In China, there's lots of cheap, basically unregulated e-bikes. Yes, there are people killed and stuff, but you know, it's what they do. You know, anyway, I have my opinion about cheap e-bikes, so I should stop there. And they'll obviously have some quality bicycle components, wheels and tires, brakes, saddles, etc. You know, you pay more, you get more. And there are more and more components now being made specifically for e-bikes. You know, you have tires designed for e-bikes. You have, you know, I talked about the drivetrain wear. Well, now you have chains and cassettes and chain rings that were designed for the stresses of an e-bike. So they last much longer than just using an old style bicycle chain for an e-bike. So the technology is getting better, but it's not always something you see. It's just something that makes your bike last longer. So they'll have a good frame, quality components, integrated mid-drive system controlled by a sophisticated torque sensor. Like I said, all torque sensors are not the same. And this is a big issue. They'll have great support. You know, an established company with a broad, well-trained dealer network. A lot of people buy cheap e-bikes off the internet, and then they come to us and they want us to fix it, and we can't. We can't contact anybody at the company. If we can, they can't provide us parts, or the company's out of business. This happened for years in the e-bike business. Companies would come and they would go. And it happened a few years ago with our main line, Bionics e-bikes out of Canada. They're mostly kits. They did some OEM work, but they were the company, this huge company that we thought would never go out of business. They had good financing, and sure enough, they filed for receivership. Canadians call bankruptcy. I should know I'm Canadian, but anyway, we were shocked, but the market just wasn't mature enough yet. They weren't selling enough units, but so many companies have come and gone, and there's so many companies that have sprung up in the last 5 years now that they're finally extremely popular, that will be gone. I know that over 50% of them will be gone 5 years from now. I'm pretty sure of that. Of course, I don't know the future, but support is really important, because people will say, well, I bought this bike because it's only 1,500 instead of your bike that's 2,500. Yeah, but can you get it fixed 6 months from now, much less 5 years from now? Is there going to be anybody who knows how to fix it, can find the parts for it, and can make it happen? So, you know, readily available updates to hardware, firmware, and software, because things keep changing. And, you know, like we talked about the fuel cell cars, they have, you know, their recalls and so on. And they're just firmware updates that, you know, we plug in your bike and update the firmware, update the software. This is a constantly evolving technology. So the best e-bikes have access to that. And parts and service, you know, I would like to see 10 years into the future. And, you know, that's what we're aiming for the bikes that we sell. So new developments, battery technology, batteries definitely, even in the last year or so, they're getting smaller, they're getting lighter, higher capacity. Motor technology, motors are getting smaller, lighter, quieter, more efficient, smoother, more reliable, all those things. They're usually subtle advances. There isn't like something new coming next year that's going to be so much better, but they're incremental advances every year in these things. Frame design, they're making the frames better. They're beefing it up where it's needed, where there's extra stresses from the e-bike, so they don't crack. But they're making it lighter, where they're figuring out they don't need all that beef in the frame. So the frames are working better and actually being lighter. So those three things have made these new SL, which are super light bikes from one of the brands we carry. They're 10 to 16 pounds lighter than the bikes they didn't necessarily replace. They're also a little less powerful. You know, it's a different kind of bike, lower wattage. Maybe you put in a little more on the pedaling, but you know, the bike's so much lighter, they actually have longer range. And you know, if you've ever been in the bike world, I mean, people will spend a lot of money to save 10 to 16 grams, and 10 to 16 ounces is like, you know, thousands of dollars. And this is 10 to 16 pounds for about the same price. So this is the kind of advances that are being made now in e-bikes. And then the controller sophistication or apps, a lot of them are controlled by apps now. It's all on your phone, and you dial in the percentage of assist you want. You even have Smart control where you can say, I don't want to run out of battery by the end of my ride, and this is how far I'm going, these are the hills I'm going to encounter, and it will control your motor so that it doesn't burn up all your battery before you get home. These are, you know, pretty cool things, power, range, navigation, and more. So that is advancing pretty quickly as well. And then I mentioned this already, more durable parts that are designed and actually rated. There are international ratings for e-bike parts, the stuff that's made to handle the stress. So go into my picks for the categories that we talked about, I think in reverse order. The e-trike, this Sunseeker Eco TAD. And again, I'm picking stuff in the middle price ranges. All these bikes might sound like a lot, but $3,000 to $6,000, a whole lot less expensive than a car. And you think of the mobility and the utility you get out of these, it's pretty good. But this is a tadpole trike, meaning 2 wheels in the front, 1 in the back. A Delta trike has 1 wheel in the front, 2 in the back. We have e-Delta trikes as well. Various reasons not as good. The biggest thing, they're easier to tip over. This handles speed better, is more fun to ride at higher speeds. And it's pretty easy to get. It's not one of those super low, sit on the ground type recumbent trikes. It's one that's pretty easy for most people to get on and off of, and easy to balance and a lot of fun. And the e-cargo bike, like I said, these are the people who need the assist the most, usually family bikes. The Yuba electric Mundo, we've dealt with Yuba for about 20 years. They make a really nice product. You see it here climbing the steep hill, and you can kind of see there, he's got 1 kid on the back, but you can actually fit 3 kids on the back of this bike, and then you've got a big cargo box up front. Some of those are options, but the bike with all that still falls in that price range. And you can see the mid-drive motor there and the battery and the down tube, so the weight's centered. There's a really nice bike. The comfort e-bike, the most approachable, there's this specialized in long model names anyway. That's the Turbo Como 4.0 low entry. Just a word about low entry frames. This is not a women's bike, okay? And some men get hung up on that. I don't want a girl bike. It's easier to step through, which for 2 things. E-bikes are, I don't care how light they are heavier than a conventional bike. It's a little harder to get your leg over when the bike's that heavy and you're kind of leaning the bike over. And many e-bikes are bought by individuals over 50, and especially men over 70 tend to lose flexibility in their hips. They can still pedal absolutely fine. They have a problem getting their leg over. So for instance, in this bike, we sell probably 85% step-through frames to men and women. So it's not men's and women's frames, it's step-through frames and step-over frames is what we call it now. Or low-entry frames, another term for it. Performance hybrid e-bikes, this is your lightweight city commuter Turbo Vado SL 4.0 EQ, which basically means a bike that looks like that. The EQ means equipped. It comes with racks, fenders, kickstand, good headlight, good tail light, reflective tires. You know, it's all included, which is not how most bikes are sold in the States. More in Europe are, but in e-bikes, that's being accepted. But this doesn't look like an e-bike. You look at the tubes, you know, it's like, where's the battery? Where's the motor? Well, the battery is inside the down tube, this biggest tube here, and the motor's in here. But this is one of the bikes that's, you know, between 10 and 16 pounds lighter than the bike it sort of replaced. It's just amazing fun to ride, and they actually have longer range because they're so light, and they don't have the same peak power in the motor, so you don't get huge horsepower. It's not like having a V8, but I have one of these, and I'm 6'3", 235 pounds, got plenty of power for me. I climb big hills. It's, you know, I don't need a V8 engine. It's this is the way, this is what's the way e-bikes are going. And finally, in the performance e-road bike, I put the Specialized Turbo Creo SL E5 comp, which looks like that. And there are a lot of fancier carbon versions. But I picked this because this one, it's easy to bolt on a rack and fenders and all the stuff you would need for an inner city commute. So it's a bike that makes a lot of sense for that type of commuter use, as well as the recreational use. So that's my presentation, and thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thanks, Ken. I think we almost need a whole day to talk about e-bikes in the future here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had several questions. Shall I just sort of start running through some of them?
Sure. It'd probably be faster. I could just answer verbally.
Yeah. So what type of charging is needed at the home or workplace? We saw some comments in the chat, but do you know about like 240 volt, 120 volt? Are there adapters between the two?
No, just 120 volt. You just plug it into any outlet. Most people have outlets in their garage, so that's what I do, just plug it in the garage and plug the charger into the bike, and you don't have to remove the battery or anything.
And it won't
Most of them
charge-
have removable batteries where you can take it into your office and charge it during the day if you ride it to work, that kind of thing. But no, it doesn't take that much. It just, the batteries aren't that big. You know, usually in 3 or 4 hours, you can charge it. We figured out a few years ago, it's roughly 5 cents worth of electricity to go 50 miles.
Sandra, if I can jump in on that, there's new building code standards that are coming into place to support electric cars. And a lot of them are specifying 240 volt outlets. All right. So in the workplace, for instance, so if you ride your bike to a workplace and you want to charge it while you're at work, do you take it into your office with you, or do you leave it out there locking away at the garage where it can charge out there? And if so, how do we do that with the building code?
Well, I don't know. Do they also have 120? Because I am not aware of a single e-bike charger that will plug into a 240 volt. Everything is 120.
So,
Okay, so-
Europe operates on a 240 system, so there's got to be an easy way to step down from 240 to 120.
I think there may be adapters, but I don't know if there's any safety issues with adapters. Peter probably knows that more than I. But you should be able to take a 240 outlet and split it essentially. Peter?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can get 120 out of a 240 volt outlet. The problem is if the 240 volt outlet is 40 amp, you can't, the code won't allow you to do that, because your breaker is 40 amps, right? And you plugged in something that can only take maybe 15. If it fails, your breaker won't trip and you'll have a fire hazard. So it's not code compliant to do that. But you can, yeah, I guess what I would say is that, especially in houses, I'd be shocked if the builder put a 240 volt outlet in the garage and did not put a 115 outlet, 120 volt outlet in the garage, because people like to put freezers and stuff out there. So you got to have that. But workplace could be a problem if there's no 120. Yeah.
Certainly for the workplace, that would be an issue. And in single family homes, it's not an issue, but we're looking at pushing up to, 40% of apartments. Now, spaces would have to have a outlet. And
Well,
maybe-
true, but I guess, sorry to interrupt, but I mean, I would think in most cases, people wouldn't leave their bike outside, right? They'd probably want to take it into their apartment or even into their office. I mean, I know most people bring their bikes right up into their cubicle. They don't want to leave it outside anyway.
A lot of people would, in general, the heavier e-bikes all have removable batteries, which you can easily, they got a key, you got to unlock it and you remove it, you take it in your office and you charge it while you're at work.
Sure.
And the ones that don't have removable batteries are the new super light ones, but they're so light, you can easily take them up an elevator, take them in your office, lean them against the wall, whatever. The battery is not, it's removable, but not easily. It's integrated into the frame just to make the whole thing lighter and simpler. But those bikes are very easy to carry with you. They weigh hardly more than a conventional bike.
A lot of places have bike storage at the workplace. Should we be looking to try to integrate some sort of like 110 outlets or something as part of the building code for putting in bike storage?
I would.
You
Sure.
maybe could. Now, most of the bikes, like the last two bikes I showed you, those are serious commuter bikes. Those both have about an 80-mile range, which can be extended. You just have a battery the size of a water bottle called a range extender that you can plug in. You could carry 3 of those with you and you could ride a double century on one of these. So, if you wanted to. But so most people are not going to commute over 40 miles on an e-bike. That's a couple hours, commute with stoplights and so on. So if you have say the West Davis to Sacramento, you got a 20-mile commute. You can go 2 days before you have to charge it. So what I'm saying is you don't necessarily have to charge it at work. Again, it depends on your situation. It would be nice to make that possible. I would love to see that. But most people can make do with charging it a couple times a week at home.
Yeah.
If you've got an 80-mile range.
And if there's not secure parking, people aren't going to use that anyway. They'll take their bikes to their offices.
Yep.
Wondering if in future building codes, we need to address something that increases the secure parking and provides charging infrastructure. Again, thinking
Yes.
down the next 20, 30 years,
Yep.
whether we should be changing to help support these behavior changes that you're referring to. Just a thought, because nobody's, certainly in the building code community, I'm hearing nobody talk about that as a potential area. So just
Yeah,
raising-
and you should, because again, worldwide e-bike sales and e-car sales aren't that different in terms of numbers. So absolutely, that's great thinking. I love it.
So Ken, could you tell me the typical range for these e-bikes? Because it sounds like it might be kind of a wide range then, but
Yeah, there's a pretty wide range, and again, depends on temperature, depends on aerodynamics, depends on your size. Obviously, I don't get 80 miles out of my bike, but I'm huge. And it depends a lot, just like a car. If you're a lead foot, if you just stomp on it on the highest level of boost away from every stop sign, it's different. If you're just cruising at constant speed, you're going to get a lot higher fuel economy. There's all those factors, but cargo bikes where you're carrying heavy loads, typically 25 to 40 miles. Quality e-bikes for an average size rider in average conditions, using an average amount of boost, 50 to 80 miles.
okay. Good.
Something like that, which is quite a distance for a bike ride. That wouldn't be much for a car, but that's getting close. You were talking about some of the early cars getting 95-mile ranges. Well, I can get more than that on my e-bike with a couple of booster batteries,
A Nissan Leaf was about 74, realistic.
Yeah, well, right. I could sell you an e-bike that can go farther than that.
Yeah. Okay.
Without an extender.
Wow.
I
Okay.
mean, but that's a measure of how technology is advanced. Early e-bikes didn't have that range. And
Yeah.
they had much bigger, heavier. I mean, I used to sell e-bikes with lead acid batteries. Weight a ton, didn't go very far.
I recently did the Foxy's Fall Century on my e-road bike, which has a 60-mile range. And I did of course, the metric, which is 63 miles, but I had quite a bit of range left at the end of that ride. So those are accurate estimates, I think.
Yeah, and I turn off my bike a lot of times. I don't use it. It's still a fun bike to ride. I went out for a ride the other day and I left with 49% battery and I came back with 46%.
Wow.
For riding for an hour and a half or something, because you don't have to even have it on all the time, or you can have it on low.
What's the typical weight of these bikes too? I mean, for like the inner city cruisers and things like
Well,
that.
40 to 50 pounds, I guess. I was going to say 25 to 75 pounds,
Mhm.
I mean, jump bikes were 75 or 80 pounds. The super light bikes I'm talking about are generally 25 to 35 pounds. The more typical e-bikes that we sell, 35 to 50 pounds.
Amazing. Sandra, any other questions there came up in the chat? You see that?
I think there were a couple that came through about some of the e-bikes out there. There are some folding ones. Can they fit into a trunk? Do you know?
Yes, there are folding e-bikes that will fit into a trunk.
Cool. And how can you tell if a given bike is a torque sensor or a cadence sensor?
The salesperson or the website or any literature you can find on that bike should tell you that. But again, just because something says it's a torque sensor,
Yeah.
there's a lot of variation. People throw that name around. I don't think there's any standard to claim that. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Is there rentals that you could try and see which type sort of works best for you?
We have some rentals at our store in Davis. They're mostly of the most approachable variety, you know, the kind of middle of the road. We don't have a great variety of different e-bikes, but you know, there are test rides and there are places that, you know, in the Bay Area that are just e-bike specialty shops and rent some more types.
Okay.
Somebody asked about drive belt. Yes, there are more and more bikes coming out. Right now, my e-bike has a chain, my non-e-bike has a belt. Well, among other bikes I have, but my daily driver has a belt but doesn't have a motor. There are a lot of bikes coming out this coming year for 2022, e-bikes with belts. Yes.
Exciting. Okay. I think that's all the questions that I found.
You know, one question actually that maybe Peter has an idea on this too is credits for buying e-bikes. I know there's the new bill, the Build Back Better bill that's supposed to be going through, but didn't it just pass a law too for credits for e-bikes? That, do you know?
Are you asking me or someone
I'm
else?
asking Peter Jacobsen or.
Oh, okay.
or,
Yeah, because I don't know.
Yeah, Peter
I don't know,
Jacobsen
but
or
maybe
Ken.
Maybe perhaps Ken knows more. If there's a state.
I'm sorry, I don't. I just
Yeah.
work on them and sell them. I'm sorry, I should know more. But the way things have been in the bike business for the last year and a half, I barely have time to keep up with what's happening in the business.
Yeah,
And,
I think Chris Granger told me there was just a bill
yeah,
that just
and
passed.
she had a death in the family this afternoon and couldn't be here. So.
Yeah, but I think she'd said just, you know, so the California legislature passed something.
I think that's true, and I was following it for a bit, but I don't know how it all turned out. But I believe it did.
Yeah.
The California Bicycle Coalition. If you look up their website, I'm sure they have the latest on that. But it is fairly recent. So
we'll look into that maybe and post it to our webpage.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, thanks to both Ken and Peter for that was outstanding. I'm glad we got your all your presentations on both of those. It's great. Ken, you might do too. If you could give us a PDF of your presentation, that'd be great. You know, in the future sometime, because I think we'll post that. It had some really great information. If you could do that.
If somebody could teach me how to convert a PowerPoint to a PDF, I could do that.
Okay. Well, we'll send you directions on that.
Okay.
But, yeah. I think there's an easy way. I think I've done it before. It's been a while. Okay. Next. And actually, this is about the infrastructure bill. Sandra, I think you're going to give us a short little what you know and what's coming.
There really isn't much information out there right now. They basically say money is flowing down from the infrastructure bill that was recently passed in Congress to California, but they don't have any information about how much is coming to Sacramento. So that discussion, there's not much to it, but we can hope that Sacramento will have a strong showing and will be a recipient of more funds. I don't know if Guy, if you've in some of your meetings, people have talked more or given more information about that.
To be honest, I haven't really looked at it. Peter or someone else may know, but I'm holding off looking at it because I know it's going to go through so much change and I don't have time to deal with things that are still, so nebulous, I guess.
Yeah, no, I've not really paying that much attention because until the departments make their allocations and money trickles into the state and the state decides where it's going to go, you just don't really know. So
were you talking about Build Back Better, Sandra, or the other one?
No, the infrastructure bill that just passed a couple weeks ago. Or last week.
We have a presentation. There's another one coming up that we can share with people, put on the distribution list that talk about what's coming up on these things. So I can
You have
get
more. So you do have information on that?
I do have presentations. I don't have to make the presentation, but others have created presentations and delivered them.
Yeah,
You can
Yeah.
make sure that people are aware of those presentations.
definitely. And I
Okay.
believe in it, so they're not only allocating funding for EVs and charging infrastructure, but e-bikes as well. So that's exciting.
That was in buses too.
Mhm. So next is, beyond that is talking about the Bolt EV recall.
Sorry, quick, Sandra, back, if we want to pass information out to people, do we have a way of getting those to people that are on this, at this meeting, or how do we do that?
Send it to me and we put it in the emails that go out.
Okay, so everybody that's interested in that needs to be on whatever email list you're referring to.
Yes, they will automatically be there since they registered for this event.
I just posted the California e-bike incentives information to the chat. It starts in July 2022. So there's, and you can get on the mailing list to get information on how to apply when it's, so it's been approved, but the applications aren't out yet.
Is it retroactive for purchases before July, say in March?
As far as I know, not. It was not proposed to be, if that was a question. So
No, Earth
hope that
Day.
doesn't kill my sales for the next 6.5 months, but
Yeah,
not that I know of. But there's more information at that link.
I'd love to have it in time for Earth Day.
Oh, now you can still buy a bike.
True.
Okay, well, thanks, Ken. Boy, that was quick. Yeah, what happens, state government goes slow too. What happens, the legislature basically authorizes the money, and then it usually goes to one of the state agencies who then has to then put together their own kind of a, mechanism to put that out. So it always takes a little time to get it cranked out, but hopefully they do it in a way that as soon as the bill's effective, that they backdate it to that date. But I guess that's in the details to come. Let's see. Bolt, the EV Bolt. We'll move on to that. And we decided to put this on there because there's a good number of us in belong to DEVA who have Bolts, Chevrolet Bolts. And I've talked to a number, and quite a few people have different experiences, what's going on. And just to kind of give you and I'll kind of give the big picture of, in November 2020, it was reported that, Bolts were actually, the Kona Electric actually was having problems with fires. And then soon after that, the Chevrolet Bolt was found that there were fires that were occurring in those, usually not so much during charging, but right at the end of charging or soon after. And then that was followed up later in this year in 2021. At that point, it affected 2017 to 2019. And then in probably July, something like that, that they basically covered all the bolts, had defects in some of the bolts in the wiring that would cause, could potentially cause a fire. So Chevrolet is now trying to repair those. I actually get a call from a Chevrolet EV handholder who's done, great job of keeping me feeling comfortable. Doesn't have a lot of details on what's going on, and I've been talking to her for about 4 months. But the local Hanley's Chevrolet here is now got batteries in their parking lot of their service department. So they are now repairing both EVs, and they're actually working on the 2017s first. It sounds like I talked to them yesterday, going 2017s older models first, and then going forward to the newer models. So,
And so with that, I am getting my battery replaced next week.
Okay, good. So
And
when
it's
did
for
you
older?
when did you notify the dealer that you wanted it repaired?
August.
Okay.
Yeah. But I have a 2019, I should say.
Yeah. So, and here's what Chevrolet did, at least that I'd heard, and Sandra, you can tell me and any others out there, if you were contacted and got the same information, that basically you could wait until Chevrolet had new modules to their batteries, they would then fix the batteries. All the batteries then would be good for another 8 years, 100,000 miles, and would all have a range of 259 miles. So for the older bolts, that was kind of a benefit. You could get your bolt repaired, or you could do a repurchase and a trade-in repurchase, which basically said, I'm going to trade you in my bolt and I'm going to buy another Chevrolet car. Or you could do a direct repurchase. And under California's lemon law, I think that's why that Chevrolet is going that way. So, so it sounds like now they're finally, Sandra, if you started in August and gave them the okie dokie then it sounds like they're going the first people to jump right in and decide they know what to do and jump in. Linda, I know Linda Diaz has a Bolt too. Have you been contacted by GM?
I've only gotten the letter from them saying, you've got the option of, you can wait or not. But again, we're leasing ours, so don't own it. And we could turn it back in, but we're happy with it.
Yeah.
We're quite pleased. We don't see any rush to do anything around it. So
Okay.
We're charging it the usual way. I mean, we have it limited to the 80% deal, but we had that anyway, just to be more efficient with the battery. But so no, I miss that, we'll let you know when this part's available and you can bring it into local dealership and take care of it. So I'm just waiting.
Okay. So your situation is similar to my neighbor who has he's leased I think it was a 2018 or 2019 Bolt, and he leased it too. And I think he's kind of in the same kind of holding pattern too, as part of that lease. So it's almost like everybody.
Yeah, mine's a 21. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yours is a new one. That's good.
Right.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. This is Heath.
Yeah.
And yeah, the reason I'm joining in here is I've sold Bolt EVs since 2017. I've had quite a few customers, and so yeah, I've been getting a lot of questions and from my customers of the past. And so I've been in touch with both corporate and a couple of the local dealerships, and yeah, pretty much it's consistent with what you've mentioned so far. There are just a couple of things that I'd like to clarify. And first of all, one disclaimer too is that I don't work for Chevrolet, so I'm just trying to share this for everybody's benefit. I think one of the really most important things is for you all to be reading what you get from General Motors about this. They are approaching this by VIN. So Richard, you're right in part regarding the year. They start with the early years, but it's actually a little more nuanced than that. They're more concerned about certain battery packs from certain locations and times. So it's actually not strictly chronological, but it largely is. Okay. Now, this is what I did. I talked with a little over 10 sets of customers. So I have some semi-quantitative information for you here, which is that of the roughly 10 customers that I had some discussions with, some in quite a bit of depth, roughly a third to a half have had issues with these vehicles, and in particular the batteries. But I'm happy to report none of these people have either had smoke or fire. So we're good on that front. And I actually had a number of people, including some of the people who originally leased 2017. They went through the whole experience happy, and they've since turned in their vehicles, and basically everything went fine. And in the more recent years, I'm glad to hear the comments of, was it Linda? Who she mentioned that so far everything seems fine, and actually that's the experience that I've heard of at least one person with a 2021. So So actually, I hope that some of this helps put this into perspective. By all means, once again, I always go back to, by all means, pay attention to what General Motors has to send you, and by all means, be safe, the precautions that they've given. But I hope we can all keep this in perspective too, and realize that there are other brands that have had their issues as well. Well, thanks for letting me put in my 2 cents worth here.
Great, thanks, Heath. I'm glad you had that background too. It's good
Sure.
to know somebody's got a little bit broader exposure than I do too. So, yeah, you know, one thing I wanted to add that you just brought up, Heath, too, was that I almost hate to see this going on with the Bolt, because it is actually one of the longer range EVs and the cheapest EV that's out there right now. You can get a new, 2022 Bolt for 31,000, little, 31,900, and the upscale Bolt EUV at 33,000. So it's, an amazingly low price to get into an EV and go, for the Bolt, almost 260 miles and 250 for the Bolt EUV. So the car for the masses almost seems like it just seems like a great car for the, for people who don't want to spend 60,000 on an EV. So it's almost kind of I think most of the, Bolt owners really like their cars. So I'll tell you what, I'm in this category where I decided I really like my Bolt. Every time I go out, I really like the way it drives too. So I had told them I'd like them to repurchase it so I could buy a Bolt EUV. Though I think at this stage, I'm going to be not seeing that Bolt EUV for quite a while, because I think they're going to try and repair all the bolts first before the Bolt EUV. So I may have my Bolt be driving, charging it to 80% and driving that for a bit in the future. So.
For
Have
those
they
looking for
offered
used,
to?
go ahead.
Have they offered to buy back many of those bolts?
I don't know, Heath, do you know? I think this is whether that's a.
Yeah, let me give you my 2 cents worth. And again, I think some of this might be varying according to the year. Okay. The actually, in my most recent contact with corporate, the basically they're handling things into 2 main phases. One is actually a software update where they're trying to keep these Bolt EVs safe. So they're reducing the range and until there's a battery replacement. Okay, so that's really the major thing that I've heard of. I have not, especially for the recent ones. And again, I'm most in touch with early people and also like 2021 and those I haven't heard about this repurchase agreement. It's more like the one thing they are doing is it's a replacement of the battery. They're not like tinkering with it and so on. They've got batteries coming into dealerships and they are being replaced. That is my understanding of it.
So the way it works is it's California law. Oh, it's based on the law of the state you purchase the vehicle in. So in California, they're required to purchase the vehicle back if the buyer requests it, but they're not going to offer that to you. The buyer has to request it from GM, and then they go through the whole process.
I asked because we were interested. We've had Volts, several of them, and love them, still love them, but we had problems and GM would not buy back one of them. It was a 2015, would not, and gave a very small amount when we said it wasn't drivable. But we got a letter from one of those attorneys, the class action suit, and my son-in-law got 31,000 back on that 2015 Volt. So if, I think keep that in mind. I mean, I tend to throw away those class action, but when GM would only offer him 4,000 because the car had several issues, he said, I said, don't worry about that. Go see what happens with the class action suit. And that worked out for him very well. But I would have loved to have bought a Bolt recently, but they were not available about a year ago because of the fire issue. So interesting that they are starting to sell them again. Didn't know that.
Yvonne, Yvonne,
Yes.
hey, Yvonne, thanks very much for your comments about the Volt. And I mean, this is one reason I'm not the one to talk to about like returning the car and getting another. I still have a 2011 Chevrolet Volt.
Yes.
One of
That
the
was my
original ones.
favorite. My daughter's first, one of her, not
Hey,
first car, but
folks,
she was loved
mine
it.
is doing great. The
Wonderful.
battery, there's never been any
Yes.
issues. It's almost charging fully still now.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a light driver compared to some. It's only about
Yes.
100,000 miles. 11 years old, 100,000 miles. It's doing great. So, hey, it's my buddy, my friend. So
Yeah.
there you go.
My 2013 that now has 130,000. I gave it to my 17-year-old grandson, and he loves it, and it's still going. So
Well, you're driving
I'm
more.
torn. We've been fortunate with son. I think we've owned 5 of them. My son-in-law has a business in the energy field, so he likes driving them. But anyway, I'm sorry that the Bolts, or that both of them are having trouble, because they are very economical. If they work.
Yvonne, I just wondered, how's the battery holding up in your 2013 Volt?
Actually, it's working pretty well. Now there is a 2018 that was getting close to 100,000, 85, 100,000. And that one, the battery just shut down completely. Apparently, I don't know whether the person driving it maybe not have been charging it every night. And they never told you, you really have to plug it in all the time. And because he didn't have a easy way to plug it in, he wasn't. And the battery just shut down. They had to tow it, and it was in for 2 weeks. They recharged the battery. So it wasn't completely dead. In other words, it was revived, whatever they call those cylinders or whatever, they really brought it back. So, but we're keeping our eyes open, because that one may, if it continues to give trouble, and it's a 2018, so it isn't that old. It's just barely 3 years old. So.
Folks, if I can just mention that, again, I have a 2011 Volt, and the battery's still doing great. And what's kind of interesting about the Bolt EV, and what they're recommending to maintain it while you might still need this full battery replacement, is that they're reducing the range, the use for the Bolt EV.
Yeah.
And it actually reminds me of what is already happening with the Volt, which is, of course, the Volt uses 10 kilowatt hours basically for a larger battery pack, and so you're cycling and you're not working the battery as hard that way. And to me, it was kind of interesting that what they're requesting on the Volt, the 2021 Volt EV that I'm using is somewhat like the Volt, which I had way back when. Maybe that's part of what we should all keep in mind is yeah, these batteries, don't work them too hard.
Yeah.
Full charge discharge with DC fast charging and so on. And maybe things will last a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the Teslas. They do tell you not to charge it to the max, but you can adjust the Teslas because they're fully electric. But you can't adjust the volts. I mean, with 37 to 47 miles, and if you go to the Bay Area and back, you're going to use the battery. Although I guess there is a way to switch it into
gas mode,
not using the battery. Yeah, I don't know all the ins and outs. So
keep in mind,
Well-
you can adjust the Volt EV, of course, and it's relatively easy to
Okay.
do that, right?
We're at about time here. So I think we're gonna have to close it. This has been great discussions though, and it's been great to hear from everybody about their experiences with the Volt and the Bolt and other vehicles as well. Thank you again to our presenters. We appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge with us, both Raul and Peter and Ken, it's been great to hear from you. And hopefully you guys will join us another time when we have more information to share on some of the incentives. I think at the end here, we're sort of going to open up the room again to all those that are new to EVs or EV curious or just purchased their first EV. So if others want to drop off, you're welcome to, but we'll just open up the floor for new questions about owning an EV.
Yeah, and I'd add one thing before everybody drops off too. If you have ideas and suggestions you want to hear of topics for the next DEVA meetings and stuff, feel free to send them to that DEVA@cooldavis.org, and we'll try and see what we can do with them. So, send your cards and letters in. So, like I said, the main topics we had today came from suggestions we got like 6 months ago. So,
Good.
Great.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to start off the discussion on for EV curious people by suggesting that from the discussion, it sounds like there may be a lot of nice used bolts coming on the market soon with new batteries that are, if they're being bought back, GM's probably going to fix them and put them on the market, and that those could represent a very good opportunity for someone to get a very nice EV that has a new battery. So something to watch
I
out
think
for.
you're right too, because when those new bolts, when they come on, will have new batteries, brand new life.
Yeah.
With a warranty, 8 years, 100,000 miles,
right,
and good for 259 miles of range.
Right.
Which in practical use is probably what, 275, something like that or more. So.
Right. And with an EV, the rest of the car doesn't really wear. It's the batteries, the one wear item, other than tires, say,
and windshield wipers.
Yeah, and wipers. But you're if you've got a new battery, man, you're starting out fresh. That's great.
Raul,
Yeah, sure.
Raul, in agreement with one of my first 2017 Volt EV customers. They had their replacement literally just 2 months ago. So they have a brand new battery.
Yeah.
They're like really happy now because they actually love their Volt EV 2017, and now they're good to go for they got a fresh warranty, 8 year, 100,000, so they're good.
Great.
Hey folks,
Great.
I'm gonna have to check off, but it's wonderful talking to all of you. I really appreciate your wonderful efforts. Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Heath.
Wonderful to hear from you, Heath.
Right. Any other EV curious questions?
So who out there is new to EVs?
We're hanging on this long. We've probably been diehards here.
Pretty sure all the on-camera people have been around to a few meetings. Are there any off-camera folks that want to jump in? You can type in the chat if you don't feel like coming on camera.
Looks like we're good. So I think 2022 is going to be an interesting year. The Bolt and the Bolts and the Bolt EUVs are both going to be back on the market, hopefully earlier rather than later. But then we have the Mustang coming out. We have the Hyundai Ioniq 5, I think is going to come out sometime at the end of the year, pretty soon here. The VW ID4 is out there. And I could keep going on. There are a lot of cars going to be there. My neighbor, and so my neighbor who's got the Mustang, Mach-E, she has it. Her husband has the Toyota Mirai hydrogen fuel cell, and I almost think she bought it to spite him in a way, because he had some fueling problems. I guess he works in Sacramento, so he had problems where he'd get to the West Sacramento fueling station and it wouldn't work. And so when she comes around the corner now, I make sure I'm not in the street, because she likes the way that car handles. You can tell. So anyway, okay. Any last minute comments?
One quick question about sorry.
Go ahead, Yvonne.
Volunteers that'd like to join us in the parade on Saturday.
Are the cars being decorated, or how does that work?
That's up to each individual. Yeah, it'd be great if you want to decorate, put a Christmas theme on your car. not required, but that'd be nice. Any other, would like to kind of follow the parade, join us in the parade?
I'll check
I
into
did-
it and get back to you.
I did it
That's-
once. It was fun. That was a while ago. And my comment was, we didn't, I missed the early part of the meeting, so I didn't hear if there was much of an update on the Teslas, but they're sort of going all over the place. And I kind of get a sense that this group is not too hot on the Teslas.
Oh,
for
no.
Maybe
I don't know
the
about that.
expense or something. No, okay.
If it's got a plug, we love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the prices went up drastically, but now I hear they're coming down. So I can't figure it out.
Well, there's the prospect of a federal tax credit coming back, which would be nice. It'd be the same as having the price lowered.
Right.
I have a Model Y I got just in July, and I'm thrilled with it. I can't hard to really imagine improving on that.
Yeah,
It's brilliant car. I love it.
yeah. That's the one that we're interested in. We had an experience, that they charge you $250 just to put in an order. And if you decide not to take it, and if you decide not to take it, you lose that $250.
Oh, it was 100 when I ordered mine, but they must have raised the price on that too.
Yeah, I did. Anyway, well, we're in a bit of a fight with them because we ordered two, went in on a Saturday, and then Sunday said, well, maybe we shouldn't have ordered those two. We want to change one of the threes to a Y. And they won't let us. They said, oh, well, in that case, you have to pay another $250.
I think one way you might be able to get around the non-refundable fee
Yeah.
is if you delay and delay and delay the order, they'll say, all right, you delayed too long. We're going to refund you your fee and cancel your order.
Good point, because we haven't done it. We have challenged them through the Visa, through the credit card company, because they took the card and didn't give us anything to sign. Nothing was signed. And we get the agreement, once we get home. So, and the agreement is fuzzy. So I think your point's a good one. We just haven't paid any attention to it. We're going ahead with a 3, but not with the 3 extended. That was the second one. I decided, as you were saying, that the Y is probably a great one too. That's the one we really want. But we haven't ordered it.
Supposed to be delivered by Christmas.
That's what they say.
So Jonathan, I have to ask, do you still have your Bolt?
Yep. They kind of hassled me because I've been dragging my feet with turning in all my paperwork because I get the most use of it out of as I can.
Good.
But I turned in all my stuff about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and then I haven't heard anything, but I'm not going to bug them until it gets closer to when I actually need the money.
Because you ordered a Tesla, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, hopefully that doesn't cause problems between you and Sandra, different charging ports.
Oh, no, we're gonna have 2 charging ports, that's for sure.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Any other
it's-
comments? Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's about 8 o'clock. So yeah, if there's any other last comments, otherwise I think we might need to wrap it up.
I'm
Okay.
good.
Good night, everyone. Great
Good
meeting.
night.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks
Bye,
all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy
Have a happy
Wednesday.
holidays and have a happy new year.
See you
Happy
next
New Year.
year.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Yes.
Bye-bye.